How's it going? Thank you all so much for chiming in, folks, to the latest show here on WardyNYM. This time being a series preview, as I'll be deep diving everything that you guys need to possibly know about the latest Mets matchup, this time against, for the second time this season, the San Francisco Giants. The first time that they'll be out in San Fran all year. And I'm really excited to break this one down, folks, as there's a lot to deep dive between the Mets and the Giants. These pitching matchups, which may very well be the most difficult series for the Mets this season, based on pitching alone, that I'll be getting into here shortly. Taking a look at the Mets, what players stand out for obvious reasons, and maybe some reasons that you don't know statistically that are backed, along with the Giants. What players stand out for San Fran in this series that could, in fact, be a problem for the Mets in this three-game matchup? That as well, I'll be deep diving. So as always, folks, make sure you watch the entire thing. If you're here in the live stream, thank you guys so much for being here. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe on. Help us get to 100 likes for the first short-term goal, and help us get to 16K subs for the next short-term goal here on WardyNYM, the largest Mets platform that is not directly affiliated with the Mets or SNY here on YouTube. But first of all, I see Ocean Girl, Wild World, Dolores, Matthew, James, all you guys, thank you so much for chiming in the stream right now. Everyone else chiming in now or on replay, appreciate you all. But I have a lot to say about this matchup for the Mets, folks, because we all know how the first series went between these two clubs earlier this year. The Mets went in and they took 3 of 4 against the Giants, the team that led the entire regular season in baseball last year with 107 wins. This year, however, the Giants, after losing 3 of 4 to the Mets in Citi Field, what feels like a month ago at least now, they have had a pretty up and down season thus far. They are 4 games above 500, but are definitely off to a different pace than maybe what you would have expected after their anomaly of a year last year, where they were the best team in the regular season. So far, San Fran this season, folks, they're 22-18 on the year. They just got pistol whipped in their most recent series, that being against the Padres. They got swept in a 3-game set, and don't get me wrong, the Padres, led by Manny Machado, are absolutely killing it right now. No Tatis, no problem for them. So similar to the Mets, the Padres are off to a phenomenal start this year. So it's not all that outlandish to see the Giants get swept there. But the Giants, again, they struggled plenty against the Padres early on this year, as have other teams. But they also surrendered 20 runs in only a 3-game span against those Padres. So especially in that series finale, the Padres ended up beating the Giants 10-1. So San Fran, they have a big fire under their butt, if you know what I mean. They're going to be pumped up, ready to go for this matchup. They want to erase the series sweep that just happened to them, and the Giants don't get swept often. So for the Padres to do that was awfully impressive. But you know that that's not going to benefit the Mets potentially in this matchup, as the Mets, even though that, yes, they won 3-4 against them earlier this year, the Giants have to come out guns a-blazing. And this is a Giants team, again, that isn't the same as even when the last time the Mets saw them earlier this year, because they currently have multiple guys that are on the injured list or are day-to-day with injury, and that includes Brandon Belt, Kurt Casale, Lamont Wade Jr., who the Mets did not see in the first series this year. He came back from injury, then got hurt again. Steven Duggar, who was a pain in the neck for the Mets in that series. I think he was a factor into one game the Mets lost in that series, which wasn't the doubleheader because the Mets swept that doubleheader against the Giants, but it was the game after or before, if I'm not mistaken. That was the Chris Bassett start. Yes, that was Bassett's first start of the year. Austin Slater is day-to-day with injury right now, and Jake McGee, who was one of their best relievers last year, off to not a good start this year, and he's currently on the injured list. So we're talking about a Giants team that's without plenty of normally everyday or close to everyday players, led by Brandon Belt especially. Belt has done really good against the Mets over the past year plus. He didn't do great in that first series against the Mets early this year. He did have a home run, though, at least one, I think. But other than that, it's going to be important for the Mets to try to take advantage of the opportunities given to them from this Giants club that is playing a little bit below expectations, to put it lightly, to start the 2022 season. But pitching-wise, boy, oh boy, do we have a matchup, folks. Let's start talking about it. And this is why I truly feel that it might come as a surprise to many of you. Again, a Giants team that is 4 games above 500 facing a Mets team that's 13 games above 500. The Mets have the largest lead among all divisions in baseball right now, 8 games ahead of the Braves for first place. They're 28-15 on the year, just came off of another series victory, because series victories come every single couple days for the Mets, is what it's feeling like after this amazing start to the season that they've had. But the Mets in this pitching matchup, that's why I think this might be one of the tallest tasks for them all year long. They're finally going to start to get battle tested some more, even though that they already have plenty, especially with that huge California trip coming up in early June against the Dodgers, Angels, and Padres. It's going to be that much more important to take advantage of what's given to you. But for the Mets in this pitching matchup, they have David Peterson. David, who of course has been phenomenal for the Mets this year. and 4 appearances, not starting every game, but most of them. He's 1-0 on the year with a 1.89 ERA for the young southpaw for the Amazons. He has yet to face the Giants this year, and the last time that Pearson has faced any team for the Mets as a starter this season, that came almost a month ago, back on May 3rd, in which he gave up a couple earned runs in 4 or so innings, but still wasn't a terrible outing by him. Wasn't the best either, but he'll be matching up against Alex Cobb. Alex Cobb, who looks like one of the best bargain signings of any signing that you saw in free agency this past offseason. The Mets did face Cobb in the first series a month ago, and the Mets did really well against him. They got 3 earned runs, 4 runs total because there was an error, 6 hits, and 4.1 innings pitch. But, and I would like to make that emphasis on the but part, Cobb left the game early, not because of the fact they gave up 3 earned runs, but because of the fact that he was out with injury. So Alex Cobb didn't really get to stretch out and have a full start the way that he wanted to his first time against the Mets, and he may get exactly that his second time around. However, Cobb is 3-1 on the year right now, win-loss record, with a 5.61 ERA. A grizzled veteran of a right-hander who can still get the job done. Started off really strong for the Giants, has been a little bit shaky of recent, but definitely a guy that's going to be no easy task for the Mets, and hopefully they can still try to take advantage. And then we have game 2, and this is, in my opinion, the biggest game of the entire series of this 3-game set. I'll be breaking down why Chris Bassitt is so much more important than just the fact that he's a starter here. But Bassitt, who on the season right now is 4-2 with a 2.77 ERA, had his worst start for the Mets this year against those same Giants a month ago. He gave up 5 earned runs on 8 hits and only 3.2 innings pitched. That was the lone loss the Mets have had in 4 games against San Fran this year. And he'll be matching up against Logan Webb. Logan Webb, who was the ace down the stretch for the Giants last year and in the playoffs, which he was so dominant in against those Dodgers in the first round. Webb on the year is 5-1. Big win-loss record favoring him there with 3.54 ERA. But against the Mets, Logan Webb, remember, he pitched a really chilly night in the latter half of a doubleheader, and that was when Mad Max on the bump, in which he carved his way through the Giants lineup like no tomorrow. But Webb, who was not really feeling the cold, the windy cold that he had to deal with a month ago there in April, he gave up 3 earned runs, 6 hits, and only 3.2 innings pitched against the Mets. So normally, that being in Logan Webb, who's a stud for the Giants, who's been pretty strong all year long. However, the Mets were able to jump on him knowing that he wasn't fully comfortable, struggled with his grip his last time. Now we're in beautiful San Francisco, so things are going to be changing, and will probably benefit Webb more than anyone here. And it's going to be a massive matchup for these two teams. I'll be breaking down more as to why here as I go through the numbers further. But the third and final game, the series finale in this one, folks. Obviously, the first 2 games are 9:45 p.m. Eastern time, so late nights for us all. Post-game shows over the next couple days are going to be pretty late, so I hope that all my guys staying up, men and women on the East Coast, that you guys make sure to stay up for the post-game shows, hopefully after a couple Mets wins. But the series finale will be right around 4 p.m. Eastern time, and this is an interesting matchup too. It's not official yet, but Thomas Szapucki is the expected starter for the New York Mets. He is a young left-handed starter that has been the Mets farm for a couple years now, had 1 appearance for the Mets last year, made his debut and was rushed up and didn't do well. Gave up 7 hits and 6 earned runs and only 3.2 innings pitched in his lone start that he had last year for the Mets. However, this year in AAA, off to a solid start, is 0-3 on the win-loss record, but that doesn't mean much always when it comes to wins and losses, and has a respectable 2.86 ERA for the young Mets lefty. And this will be the second lefty that you'll be seeing in the rotation for the Mets in this series. And again, that's going to be matching up against another starter, that being Jacob Junis. And Junis is somewhat similar to Szapucki in the sense that he's a guy that didn't start the year in the rotation for the Giants, but because of guys like Anthony DeSclafani, who's currently on the 60-day IL, they dealt with some injuries to their pitching staff. Junis, throughout the entire month of May, after being a reliever through the first month of April, has started his past 3 games that he's been in need for the Giants, and he's done a solid job. And overall, Junis on the year, who throughout his career has been an inconsistent reliever, but with the Giants and having that quote-unquote cheating lab that they do with the great pitching staff and overall pitching coaches that they have really fine-tuned Junis's game into a solid starter as of late. He's 1-1 on the year with his win-loss record with 2.70, I should say, ERA. And again, he has started in his last 3 games this season. So that is what you have for the pitching matchup, folks. And again, game 2 is where I think we need to be focusing on the most here, because game 1 and game 3, who knows? That can be a pitching clinic maybe, or it can be an offensive clinic versus game 2. That's where the Mets have their one bona fide starter out of these 3 games. And I do believe this is the first series all year for the Mets where they only have one true starter in their rotation, in the sense of one guy that is expected to be their starter every fifth day throughout the season as long as he's healthy. David Pearson has exceeded expectations early on this year, but he's also someone that, again, is only in this rotation right now because of the injuries that the Mets are currently dealing with. Same thing can be said, of course, with Thomas Szapucki, who is the expected starter for the series finale. So that's why game 2, going head-to-head, Bassett trying to have a better start versus his last time around against the Giants, and Webb trying to have a better start versus his last time around against the Mets. That's going to be a huge matchup in game 2 that I'm really excited for, along with the overall series. But now when we get into key Mets this series, folks, there are a couple guys that I think you need to be keeping an eye on. And trust me when I say that this is not something where I'm picking these guys just because of the fact that they're big name. No, especially with Alonso and Lindor, it goes based on matchups in a lot of ways from the numbers I was looking up. But Pete Alonso, who has been an absolutely hitting machine, one of the best hitters in baseball right now, one of the best players, if not the best player, you could argue rightfully, for the Mets right now. However, Alonso, he has currently a 400 average and an 838 OPS in 4 games and 19 plate appearances. 4 games and 16 plate appearances against the Giants from their first series this year. Adding on further from that, Alonso this season as well, I mean, over his past 7 games, he's been tearing the cover off the ball. He has himself in 30 plate appearances, 3 home runs, 8 RBIs, and 915 OPS. I gain all my words mixed up. I apologize, guys. Pete Alonso in Oracle Park, which of course is the ballpark in San Francisco for the Giants. This is his stat line. In 7 games in Oracle and San Fran and 30 play appearances, he has 3 home runs, 8 RBIs for a 915 OPS. That's really, really impressive for Alonso. And that's why when you're over RBI a game guy in this park, obviously I'm going to favor you, along with the fact that you are Pete Alonso. I expect you to go out there and ball. I picked Pete Alonso in my series preview for the Colorado series, and he was a huge hitter, a huge help for the Mets in that matchup, which the Mets won 2-3, of course. But then we get on to some further numbers here against one specific pitcher. Based on these 3 pitchers, there's one that stands out who has a good matchup for the Mets and Pete Alonso, and that is Logan Webb, actually. Alonso has 1 home run and over 1,000 OPS in 6 plate appearances against Logan Webb in his career. So small sample size, but still good to see, knowing that we'll be matching up against him in game 2 of the series. But over Alonso's past 7 games this season, this is what I was originally trying to say. He has himself 2 home runs, 8 RBIs, a 321 average, and a 959 OPS. Just shy of 1,000 OPS, and again, over RBI per game pace over the past 7 for Alonso. So for all these reasons, along with him being the NL leader right now in RBIs with 37 and second to first in home runs in all the NL with 10, only shy of CJ Cron, who I believe has 11 for the Rockies. But now let's get into not just Pete Alonso, folks. Let's also talk about Francisco Lindor, because Lindor has faced a lot of criticism. I understand it, but he's always going to. And Lindor has a good matchup here against these Giants a little bit too. Against the Giants this season, in 4 games and 19 play appearances, Lindor has himself a just shy of 400 average, 368 to be exact, a 1,000 OPS exactly, 1 home run and 3 RBIs from that 4-game set a month ago. And that, of course, looking further here, and Oracle Park for Lindor, in 3 games and 14 plate appearances, he has 2 RBIs and 357 on-base percentage. So Lindor has gone on base on a good clip, hasn't played in San Fran much, obviously, but doesn't have terrible numbers at all. And pitching-wise, some pitchers that stand out for Lindor. Against Alex Cobb, he has a 300 average and 10 plate appearances against him. And that also includes Logan Webb, in which he's 2 for 2 in a very small sample size against. And the big guy, that being in Jacob Junis, who is really the surprise starter that the Mets will be facing this matchup. No one really has much better experience than Francisco Lindor, as Junis has spent times with other clubs, of course, especially in the AL. And that's where we saw Lindor matching up with him a lot. 37 plate appearances Lindor has had against Junis, in which he'll be matching up in the series finale. And in those 37 plate appearances, he has a total of 5 home runs, a 500 average, and a 1,556 OPS. So all I'm going to say is, if you're a betting man, if you're going to bet on anyone to potentially have a nice day at the plate for the day game, this series finale against the Giants, I would put my money on Francisco Lindor for basing things off that matchup alone. But over his last 7 games as well, Lindor has been hitting the ball well and getting on base at a good clip. He has 2 RBIs over his past 7 games, a 280 batting average, and a 718 OPS. And that, of course, goes with the lack of slugging. That's something that I want to see more from Lindor, of course, and I'm sure that we will throughout the year and as things warm up. but it is nice to see that Lindor has been swinging the bat better as of late, especially over these past 7 games. But then the final batter that we have this one, folks, and again, thank you all so much, everybody in the chat right now. I'll be getting all your comments, questions, and concerns per usual once I wrap up everything that I think you guys need to know about this 3-game set for the Mets. Their latest matchup this time against the Giants. But again, help us get to 100 plus likes before the end of the show for our first short-term goal. Help us get to 16K subs. Always appreciate everybody. But then we get into Luis Guillorme. Guillorme, who is the face of the Mets against the Rockies, has been simply phenomenal. Really, since Robinson Cano has been cut a couple weeks ago, and with the increased playing time there at second base, Guillorme has thrived. And against the Giants this year, Guillorme thrived as well. Let's not forget that. Guillorme had himself in 11 plate appearances over 4 games in the first series earlier this year against San Fran. Guillorme has a whopping 429 average and a 1,029 OPS. To expand further on that, he's 1 for 1 in his career against Logan Webb, which I do believe came from that series earlier this year. But over his past 7 games, guys, Luis Guillorme has simply been dominant. One of the best hitters, not just for the Mets, but in all baseball. He has 1 RBI, but is including a 556. Yes, a 556 batting average, folks, over his last 7 games, including over 1,000 OPS at 1,167 to be exact. So Luis Guillorme, who has played himself into an everyday role with the Mets, Buck Showalter has favored him from the beginning. Guillorme's been in every series, it's felt like, at least 1 of 3 games. Now he's been playing consistently at second while, say, McNeil's in left. Or maybe if you even throw a guy like Can at DH every now and then to give them both consistent playing time, I'm for it, because Guillorme doesn't just look great at the plate right now, way over 300 batting average, but he also has been phenomenal with the glove. He is the Mets' best defensive infielder. I don't even really think it's much of an argument. As amazing as Lindor is and as strong as McNeil and Pete have been at times, there's no one that really matches what Guillorme's doing. At third base, he proved this series finale against the Rockies that he can handle third without a problem. That can make you say, wow, Guillorme should be at third, and maybe Escobar should be the everyday DH for a bit, because JD and Dom haven't been anything consistent. Eduardo's been in an entirely month-long slump, both offensively and defensively, so it makes even that much more sense to potentially have Guillorme there at third, have second for McNeil, Canna in left, Lindor at short, while potentially having Escobar at DH. So I'm very excited and curious to see how Buck is going to go about his lineups through this 3-game stretch while Guillorme has been as red hot as he has been. But to expand further with Guillorme, I mean, he's been raking against lefties, but he's hitting phenomenal against righties too. I mean, just matchup-wise, he really has all that it takes right now to be one of the best hitters for the Mets. And that's huge, knowing that this was a guy that we had no clue what his role was going to be heading into the season originally. But now getting into the San Francisco Giants, folks, what players should stand out for you? Well, we got to start with Mike Yastrzemski. Yastrzemski has been, Yaz, as he loved to call him, has been one of, if not the best hitter for the Giants early on this year. He's currently batting right around 300, doing great things. He's batting far better than what he was the last time the Mets saw him, even though he wasn't completely terrible against the Mets early on this year. However, Yastrzemski, as you see, had strong numbers in that first matchup. And 4 games and 16 play appearances a month ago, he had 1 home run, 2 RBIs, a 333 average, and an over 900 OPS against the Mets this season. So, as I said, not terrible. Yeah, that's an understatement. These are really good numbers against the Mets through those first 4 games that they matched up. But Yastrzemski, especially, he's 2 for 6 in his career against Chris Bassett, so he knows what it takes to hit off him, which is the Mets' best starter in this 3-game set. And also, he has a 409 average and a 935 OPS against left-handed starters this season. Why does that stand out? Well, the Mets have 2 of their 3 starters this series being a lefty, that being David Pearson game 1, and then Thomas Szapucki, the expected starter in game 3. So even though that Yastrzemski himself is a lefty, he's been raking against lefties, and I fully expect him to do really well against the Mets. Hopefully it's not too much, but, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if he really has a great series. And over his past 7 games, he's been red hot, 1 home run, 5 RBIs, a 429 average, and 810 OPS. So Yaz has been the hottest hitter as of late for the Giants with all the injuries that they've been enduring too, and they'll be riding on him to hopefully have a strong series. Then my next guy, I do in fact have Wilmer Flores, and I must say that Wilmer Flores, the reason why I chose him is not so much based on his numbers this season and overall against the Mets, because he's had some good moments against the Mets hitting wise, but overall he's nothing crazy against them. He's been good so far, and he's always going to be a solid hitter against him. Now, he didn't do much at all other than having a strong defensive play, and I think 1 RBI in the first series against the Mets early on this year. But no less, Flores, he's always standing out. In 18 games and 77 play appearances, he has 7 home runs and 18 RBIs, a 269 average, and an 817 OPS at home this year at Oracle Park. Why is that important, you might ask? Well, we're in Oracle Park, and He's only played in 18 games and has 18 RBIs. He's an RBI per game pace right now playing at home. And that's definitely an X factor that'll benefit the Giants in this matchup against these Mets. So Wilmer, outside the fact that we all love Flores no matter what, still definitely got to keep an eye on. He's Mr. Clutch. Always has been, always will continue to, especially if these games are tight. That's a guy that very well could be an X factor that we'll be keeping an eye on. But then my final guy I have, and this is really, I should have put Chris Bassett in my key Mets to watch this series because I have Logan Webb, but both are the same. Logan Webb, again, gave up 3 earned runs a month ago against the Mets. Chris Bassett gave up 5 earned runs against the Giants a month ago. So it's that important for both these stars to get off on the right foot in this Game 2 matchup. This is, again, the matchup to watch of this series, the best pitching matchup by far, at least on paper. 2 guys trying to bounce back versus how their first outings against these opposing clubs went. And that's why, again, Logan Webb will be the guy probably more than anyone else to jump on. Not to denounce the potential pitching of Cobb and Junis, but Webb is their guy. He's their most consistent guy, and he's not an easy guy to jump on. So the fact that the Mets were able to do that their first time against him was great. Now let's see if they can do it again, because again, if Webb wins the battle between him and Bassett, that could be an X factor for sure in winning or losing this entire series. So outside of that, folks, there really isn't much more that needs to be said on breaking down numbers, other than if we're looking through Fangraphs, overall offensive rankings are the following. The Mets are currently ranked 6th in the MLB in offense per Fangraphs, and they dropped 4 spots. They were originally 2nd in MLB entering the Rockies series. So you see how quickly the numbers can change. San Francisco Giants, however, are 13th. So right just above league average is what they are with their offense right now. Starting pitching rankings for overall stats from their starters, the Mets have the 5th best rotation right now in baseball, even with their injuries at the moment. The Giants are 9th best. Then you have bullpen rankings. The Mets have moved actually in a better spot. They were 15 last time I checked. Now they're number 12 with their bullpen rankings, so above average here in the league. And then the Giants are number 9, just like their starters. So consistency there on the pitching front for the Giants. And the Mets jumped on starters early the last time they faced San Fran, and also didn't do terrible against the bullpen. Yes, they had some struggles, but again, they still managed to win 3 of 4 in a really impressive fashion. And overall, this, again, can very well be one of the biggest tests the Mets have had all season thus far. Not necessarily just because of the matchup and being in San Fran, but again, the lack of quality depth of starters the Mets have in this 3-game set. That may make or break them 100%. Even if they have offense, if they don't have pitching, they're not going to get anywhere. And that's why it's a key test for how the Mets evaluate the rotation now and going forward. It's a key test for the front office specifically. If, say, Pearson and Zvucky do well, that'll give the Mets more comfortability to say, hey, we can ride with them a bit longer and maybe hold off and potentially doing a desperation type trade that we're reluctant to do if it's not at the right price or anything like that. But to everyone chiming in, folks, now is the time where I'm going to start answering all your comments, questions, and concerns. And for people on replay, this is where I'll be cutting things off, which is none of you guys in the live stream. So again, people on replay, thank you so much for watching. The first game will be tonight starting 9:45 p.m. Eastern time. I'll be live post-game whenever that game ends, around 1+ a.m. the next day or whatever. Same thing with game 2, and then the series finale will be a better time, at least for us. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What are the biggest X factors to you in this series between the Mets and the Giants? How do you think the series is going to go? Do you think the Mets are going to win 2 of 3? Do you think they're going to sweep? Do you think they're going to lose the series? Do you think they're going to get swept? Whatever your thoughts are, make sure to let me know in the comments below. Don't hesitate again from smashing that like and subscribe button. Thank you so much in advance. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, people in the live stream, I'll start answering your comments. But again, for people on replay, this is where we cut things off.